By 1952, the echoes of the Second World War still reverberated across the globe, but the skies had changed. The F4U Corsair, a plane that had once dominated the Pacific theater, now flew missions in a war that was different in every conceivable way. For pilots like Captain Jesse Folmar of Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 312, the renowned checkerboards, the familiar hum of a propeller was a lifeline, a connection to the air battles that had defined an era. The Corsair, with its rugged frame and distinctive gull-wing design, had proven itself against kamikaze attacks and fortified airfields. Yet now it faced a threat it had never been designed to meet: the jet-powered MiG-15. High above the rugged mountains and frozen rivers of North Korea, the margin for error was vanishingly small. Every decision, every maneuver, could mean the difference between survival and sudden, fiery death. And yet, the very air they flew seemed to pulse with tension. The enemy jets were faster, higher, and more agile, a blur of deadly metal streaking across the sky. For Folmar and his comrades, these weren't just technical challenges, they were existential ones. Would the legacy of propeller fighters be enough to confront the new jet age, or would they become relics themselves, swept aside by the relentless advance of technology? The answer, hanging as heavily as the clouds above the Taedong River, would come sooner than anyone expected. The early morning sun glinted off the wings of the Corsairs as they lined up for takeoff. Pilots adjusted their helmets, checked their instruments, and exchanged terse nods with their wingmen. The roar of engines filled the airfield, a mechanical heartbeat signaling the start of missions that were becoming increasingly perilous. Each sortie carried weight beyond the mission at hand: families, comrades, and the unspoken fear that this could be their last flight. The transition from the prop-driven dogfights of World War II to jet versus prop combat demanded both bravery and ingenuity. And as Folmar taxied his Corsair toward the runway, he had no way of knowing that the day ahead would test every ounce of skill he had ever honed. Takeoff was smooth, but the tension did not abate. As the squadron climbed above the low-hanging clouds, the ground below a patchwork of rice paddies and frozen rivers, the air seemed to hold its breath. The pilot scanned the horizon for the first sign of enemy activity, but in the eerie quiet, the MiG-15s remained invisible predators waiting for the right moment. And then, without warning, a glint of metal in the sky, a sharp, deadly silhouette appeared. The enemy had arrived. Suspense thickened as Folmar and his wingman, First Lieutenant Willie Daniels, adjusted their formations, instinctively anticipating the maneuvers they had practiced countless times. The MiGs approached at unimaginable speed, their swept wings cutting the sky, a stark reminder that the old rules of aerial combat were being rewritten in real time. The Corsairs, though agile in low-speed turns, had to rely on strategy, cunning, and the courage of their pilots. Every second felt like a lifetime as the distance between friend and foe closed. Could skill and experience overcome raw speed? Or were these veteran pilots about to meet their match in the jet age? Even as the first clouds of conflict began to gather over North Korea, one thing was clear: the skies were no longer familiar territory. For every maneuver perfected in World War II, there was now a countermeasure the enemy had yet to invent. Folmar's hands tightened on the controls, the plane vibrating with anticipation and the promise of chaos. And in that moment, the line between heroism and tragedy blurred, suspended on the edge of a horizon that would soon erupt in fire and steel. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, consider subscribing and liking the video. Every click helps more people discover these untold tales of courage and survival in the skies. September 10, 1952, dawned cold and gray over North Korea. Captain Jesse Folmar and First Lieutenant Willie Daniels carried over 2,000 pounds of bombs as they climbed into the sky, the weight pressing on their Corsairs like the gravity of the mission itself. Their target lay along the southern shores of the Taedong estuary, where enemy forces had been reported moving in coordinated formations. Intelligence had painted a picture of logistical movements, but the skies above Chinampo had a way of rewriting even the best-laid plans. What had begun as a reconnaissance and strike mission was about to transform into a fight for survival unlike anything the Marines had encountered in the past decade. As they approached the coastline, the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly, and a faint glint of sunlight reflected off the distant waters. Then, almost imperceptibly, movement appeared, 2 MiG-15s streaking like silver bullets across the sky. Their approach was sudden, calculated, and merciless. Folmar's heart pounded, not from fear alone, but from the acute awareness that this was the very moment the Corsairs had been tested against the new breed of air combatants, jets faster and more agile than anything they had faced in World War II. Could they maneuver quickly enough? Could propellers outfight turbines? The answer would be written in the roar of engines and the flash of gunfire that was about to erupt. With a deafening crescendo, the MiGs dove. Folmar and Daniels reacted instinctively, banking hard, engines screaming as the Corsairs fought to climb and turn. Bullets streaked past, leaving smoky trails across the gray sky. Every evasive maneuver brought the Marines closer to the edge of physical and mental limits. Bombs had to be released on schedule, but survival demanded an almost impossibly delicate balance between mission success and the instinct to live. One wrong move and the sky would claim them. The first attack passed in a blur, leaving the Corsairs momentarily unscathed, but the danger was far from over. Reinforcements could arrive at any second, and with each passing moment, the enemy grew more aggressive. Daniel's voice crackled over the radio, tense but precise, relaying positions and calling for cover. The MiG circled, probing, testing, searching for weakness. Folmar tightened his grip, remembering the lessons of dogfights past the sudden dives, the split-second rolls, the terrifying calculus of speed versus firepower. And then, in a heart-stopping instant, one of the MiGs broke formation, veering directly toward Daniel's Corsair, cannon fire spitting death in streaks of steel and fire. Could they survive this first real test of aerial combat in the jet age? The Corsairs responded with a mix of instinct and practiced skill. Folmar rolled into a defensive dive, then pulled up sharply, the G-forces pressing against his body as the enemy attempted to flank him. Smoke and tracer rounds painted the sky, each plane a moving target, each maneuver a gamble. Overhead, the Taedong River glistened cold and indifferent, a mirror to the unfolding chaos. Every second carried weight. The wrong turn could mean obliteration, and yet every moment offered the slim chance of turning the tables. Just when the battle seemed to reach a fevered pitch, Folmar spotted an opening. One MiG had left its flank exposed, and with the calm precision of a pilot who had spent years mastering propeller-driven combat, he aimed, fired, and watched the enemy plane spiral downward, a metallic comet falling toward the Earth. Victory flashed briefly in the cockpit, but it was fleeting. Reinforcements were inbound. More jets could appear at any moment, and the Corsairs, valiant though they were, could not outrun the rising tide of enemy firepower. Folmar's mind raced. How many more lives would be gambled in this sky? And what was the cost of survival? A war that demanded perfection in every maneuver. Minutes stretched like hours as the skies above Chinampo erupted into chaos. The roar of Corsair engines blended with the piercing scream of MiG-15 turbines, creating a symphony of danger that could disorient even the most seasoned pilots. Captain Jesse Folmar's eyes were fixed on the nearest enemy jet, a silver streak moving with impossible speed. The propeller-driven Corsair, sturdy and reliable, seemed almost quaint against the MiG's jet-age fury. Yet it carried something the new machines could not: decades of combat wisdom, instinct honed in the Pacific, and the unshakable courage of a Marine trained to survive against impossible odds. Then it happened. Folmar pulled his Corsair into a steep climb, dodging the MiG's first volley of cannon fire. The enemy pilot followed, matching speed with deadly precision, and for a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as though history itself was being rewritten, a battle between eras, propeller against jet, skill against speed. In a flash, Folmar found the perfect window. He opened fire, 20mm cannons screaming, tracers lancing through the sky. The MiG shuddered, spiraled, and tumbled downward, leaving a smoke trail that cut across the morning light. The first MiG kill by a Marine in Korea, a historic moment, but there was no time to savor victory. Reinforcements were already appearing over the horizon. First Lieutenant Daniels radioed urgently, alerting Folmar to more MiGs closing in from high altitude. The Corsairs, agile but slower, were now outnumbered. Each turn, each dive, became a fight against physics itself, the G-forces pressing against their bodies while adrenaline sharpened every sense. Smoke and tracer rounds crisscrossed the sky, the sound of cannons like thunderclaps in the cockpit. And then, a sudden jolt, the Corsair shuddered violently. Metal screamed under fire. Folmar's heart sank. Had he been hit? The answer came in terrifying clarity. A stream of tracer rounds ripped through the fuselage, tearing at the wings and cockpit. The aircraft shuddered uncontrollably, and a chunk of the wing was ripped away in an instant, leaving Folmar with a choice that no pilot wants to face: attempt to fight on, or abandon the plane and trust the ejection seat. Every second became an eternity as the ground below drew closer, and the MiGs circled like predators, sensing weakness. Could he eject safely, or was the deadly sky about to claim another hero? With practiced precision, Folmar pulled the ejection handle. The seat shot him into the air, the roar of engines replaced by the whistle of wind and the sudden, terrifying emptiness beneath him. The Corsair, a proud warrior of a bygone era, plummeted in flames, a testament to both human skill and the relentless evolution of warfare. Suspended above North Korea, Folmar felt a strange combination of fear and triumph, alive, but still in mortal danger. The MiGs could have targeted him even now, turning the act of survival into another perilous gamble. Moments later, the sea appeared, glinting cold and vast beneath him. Folmar's training took over, parachute deployed, calm in the midst of chaos, every movement deliberate. He descended into the Yellow Sea, battered by wind and adrenaline, but alive, a living proof that courage, skill, and preparation could carry a Marine through even the most harrowing aerial combat. And yet, as the water approached, one lingering question remained: would he be rescued, or would the hostile coast claim him before help arrived? If you're captivated by these stories of courage in the skies, hit subscribe and like the video. Every interaction helps bring these incredible, true-life tales to more people around the world, keeping history alive and unforgettable. Captain Jesse Folmar plunged into the icy waters of the Yellow Sea, the shock of the cold hitting him like a physical blow. Every muscle tensed, adrenaline mingling with exhaustion as he struggled to keep afloat, his mind racing through the sequence of events that had brought him here. The Corsair was gone, consumed by fire and gravity, yet he remained alive against overwhelming odds. Above, the sky still echoed with the distant roar of jets, the remnants of the battle that had rewritten the rules of aerial combat. The question now was survival. Would he make it out of the waters before the relentless tide or enemy forces could claim him? Minutes stretched into a tense eternity until a familiar silhouette appeared on the horizon, an albatross seaplane, dispatched from nearby UN naval forces. Its pontoons skimmed the waves, creating a trail of white foam in its wake. Folmar waved frantically, heart hammering as the plane closed in. Time slowed as the crew recognized him, lowering a rescue ladder into the turbulent sea. Each second felt like the balance of his entire life. Could the rescue succeed amid rough waters and the ever-present threat of renewed attacks? The albatross plucked Folmar from the water, lifting him from danger into the relative safety of the cabin. Wet, shaken, but alive, he was met with the hushed awe of the crew, who had witnessed his courage and tenacity. It was a moment that crystallized the paradox of war, chaos and destruction juxtaposed against skill, bravery, and human endurance. Folmar's survival wasn't just luck. It was the culmination of years of training, the instincts honed in World War II, and a steely resolve that refused to surrender to circumstance. Back on base, news of Folmar's feat spread quickly. He had not only survived a confrontation with multiple MiG-15s, but had also scored a historic kill, the first by a U.S. Marine in the Korean War. Awarded the Silver Star and later the Purple Heart, his actions became emblematic of a generation of pilots straddling two eras of air combat. The lessons of propeller-driven dogfights had found new relevance, proving that courage, ingenuity, and experience could still turn the tide, even in the age of jets. But the story also reminded his comrades that each sortie carried a mortal risk, and each victory was purchased with uncertainty and peril. Beyond the medals and recognition, Folmar's experience left an enduring mark on the ethos of marine aviation. Training programs were adapted, tactics evolved, and the legacy of pilots who had fought in World War II became a living guide for those facing the challenges of modern aerial warfare. His story reminded the world that technology alone did not determine outcomes. Human courage and adaptability were equally, if not more, decisive. Yet, as historians would later note, every tale of survival came with its shadows. How many pilots had not returned to tell their story, and how fragile was the line separating heroism from tragedy? For Folmar, the transition from the Corsair to the modern jet battlefield was more than technical, it was symbolic. He had navigated the precipice of history, bridging the gap between the courage of World War II and the demands of the Korean War. The skies had changed, machines had evolved, yet the valor, skill, and determination of those who flew remained constant. His legacy, and that of his fellow Marines, endures not merely in awards and records, but in the very fabric of marine aviation, a testament to human resilience, bravery, and the unbroken spirit of those who confront death in the pursuit of duty. As he looked back on that fateful day, the roar of engines and the glint of enemy jets remained vivid in his memory, a reminder that the courage of one pilot could echo far beyond the clouds, inspiring generations to follow. The skies of Korea had tested him, and he had survived. The story of Jesse Folmar, hero of the Corsair, was now etched into history, a bridge between two wars, two eras, and a timeless testament to the bravery of those who dared to fly into the storm.